Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here, and I'm a filmmaking geek.
I'm Monkey, and I am a theater geek.
I'm BlueDragonFive, and I'm a superhero geek.
And welcome to the Main Street Cinema, the show where we discuss the finer points of filmmaking. Nice. On a very special podcast that's literally like 4 years in the making at this point, almost.
Like 3?
Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Genre Hopping. Yeah, you like that title, guys?
Sounds kind of ignorant to me, but you know.
Well, there's unexpected virtue in there.
Yeah, something like, I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know.
Which is why it sounds ignorant to you, because the virtue was unexpected.
The whole time.
All right.
You know what else is unexpected?
What?
Spanish Inquisition.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So guys, this is something that's been in my mind ever since I first saw Birdman in theaters, where, hey, we have the perfect 3 people to talk about this movie because it's coming at it from 3 perspectives. Like, I'm the filmmaking nut where, I love my auteur filmmaking. I just saw Phantom Thread today by one of my favorite filmmakers, Paul Thomas Anderson. It was okay, not one of my favorites from him.
That's a good trailer, though. It's a really good trailer.
This has phantom signs in the background, so close enough.
I wouldn't put it in my top 10 of the year. I wouldn't put it in my top 5 of Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography, but it was good. It was good. Anyway, so I'm definitely leaning into the auteurist side of things, though. I love following directors and their work and their style and whatnot. Like I said, I love the technical side of filmmaking. I love analyzing it, and this movie certainly has things to analyze, so that's where I'm coming at it from. Monkey, of course, you're the theater geek in the room. We have a whole podcast.
And also the reason it took so long to do this damn thing, because I put the pro in procrastination.
He's kind of the Ed Norton in the room right now.
God.
Oh, God. Dude, low blow.
And Dragon, naturally, you're the knower of all things the Bat and other superheroes, but, the Bat is important to this conversation. So, so you're coming at it as a big fan of Michael Keaton's Batman, a big fan of superheroes in general. And so we figured together, those 3 things, theater, filmmaking, and superheroes combined, would make for an interesting conversation that kind of breaks this film down from 3 different angles. So let's first get the perspectives on what each 3 of us think of this film. Then we'll get a little background, and then we'll break it down in the 3 categories we have laid out. So who wants to go first on their general kind of thesis statement on this movie?
Well, you should probably go first, Tiki.
Gosh darn it, I probably should. You're right. All right. Well, I saw this movie famously, or at least famously in my own circles, in a triple movie day along with Interstellar and Big Hero 6. And that was a marathon of a day, man. And I ultimately didn't appreciate any of those movies as much as I probably should. Ironically enough, I think the one from that day that I liked the most was Interstellar, which, looking back on it, is probably the one I have the most problems with on a rewatch. But Birdman was something that I had heard a lot of hype about going into. I had heard about, of course, about the single shot gimmick. That was the thing that really intrigued me as a fan of filmmaking, because, of course, filmmaking fans, we all love our long takes. Long takes are one of the
for oneers. We love our oneers.
Yeah. And so basically a whole movie that's a oneer. That was an interesting thing. And one of my favorite YouTubers and favorite film critics, Chris Stuckman, he gave this an absolutely glowing review that really sold me on that I had to see it in theaters, because he straight up said it was one of his favorite movies of all time. And I gotta say, the first time I saw it in theaters, it didn't really click with me. Thank God for pirating, and thank God for torrents and all that, because I was able to watch this again and again and again before the Academy Awards, and I grew a really, really big appreciation for it upon all these rewatches, because I think this is a film that really benefits from rewatches, because you really get to see all the minutia that's put in behind it. It's like a tightrope act. And so ultimately, I honestly think this might be in my top 5 of the decade. along with prestigious films like The Social Network, Moonrise Kingdom, Inception.
Sausage Party.
Like, what? I'm sorry. No. What? Anyways.
Ed Norton joke here. Moving on.
Fair enough. But you know what I mean? Like I hold this in very high regard. This to me it's ultimately one of the most satisfying Best Picture winners I've ever experienced as a film fan in terms of the Academy Awards. I really think this it wasn't technically my number one of the year. My number one of the year that year was actually The Babadook, which had no chance of winning anything at the Academy Awards because it was like a small Australian film that kind of blew up in popularity. But I digress. I mean, I think ultimately this film is it's a towering achievement, and I could watch it over and over again.
Hey, real quick, Tiki, should we work in thesis statements along with this, or are we going to go around that after we kind of...
Well, I mean, by thesis statement, I kind of just meant what you think of the movie overall. So that was a thesis statement for all intents and purposes.
Sure, sorry. Well, I guess I'll go next then.
Sure.
So yeah, Birdman. It's kind of funny. Birdman at first it was kind of flying under the radar for me because I heard Michael Keaton is going to be Michael Keaton as Birdman, mainly the poster, and then eventually I saw a trailer. It looked very interesting. I mean, it's something I definitely I'm sure was going to be good. Unfortunately, I would assume it had kind of the constant bane of my existence movies that look like Oscar winners, that look like amazing pieces of cinema, and they have like these limited releases or these very convoluted releases, because even if they are quote-unquote wide releases like Shape of Water, they're not in any local theater, so it's...
You still haven't gotten Shape of Water?
I know, and it's killing me. I love it.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So basically, I would assume it fell into the same things that always happens with the good Oscar winners, like Shape of Water. And the point is, any movie that looks good or looks interesting, that I would definitely, basically after I hear the buzz, Tiki, hyping up for it, like hearing just buzz or hearing Birdman kind of said a lot, and Keaton on the radio. It's hey, Keaton, it's been a while since Keaton's been anything big, and hey, Birdman. It's kind of interesting commentary on Batman, and. Eventually I was able to see it on HBO, as eventually, unfortunately, I have to wait for a lot of the Oscar winners, and I finally got a chance to watch it, and I was very impressed by it. I was very impressed. It did live up to the hype that Tiki had been building around Oscar season. And I guess, honestly, as a thesis statement, I just want to kind of get this out of the way here, because this kind of ties in all my stuff, and I think it's kind of important, just with the Keaton of it all. Interestingly, I found out that Birdman wasn't written with. I guess you don't mind if I jump ahead a little with this, do you, Tiki? I mean, I don't want to take away from kind of the backstory we got down the line.
Yeah, I'd kind of prefer if you didn't.
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm sorry, folks, I accidentally jumping ahead there, but the point is, Keaton. I just this film, I feel there are a lot of layers to this film that I really enjoyed on a rewatch. I didn't watch this movie a whole lot, but I watched like let's say, if I were just to spitball, maybe like 5. This is probably my 5th time watching it, because it is a long movie. It's a long sit, but it's very impressive. Again, it's very much like a Breaking Bad wonder, but for a full movie, which is very impressive. Alejandro
Inarritu.
Yes, he. I think he's an excellent director. I haven't seen Revenant because I really heard some. I've heard mixed reviews. I've heard really good reviews from some people.
Shit compared to this, trust me.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's kind of what kind of turned me off for Revenant. Because how can you do better than this in comparison? That's kind of the. It's kind of nowhere else but up with this movie in many respects. Again, I love how it kind of parallels, and there's a really smart commentary on superhero films. But more on that later. I was very satisfied with this movie, and I get that it's not everyone's cup of tea. I've shown this movie to some others, and I'm not saying they don't get it, because again they watch it because again there's a lot of love built for Keaton. I think it's the main reason a lot of people, this was on the radar for so many people, or why people at least check it out of morbid curiosity. And you either get it or you don't in some regard, but I think at the very least you'll be wowed by it. Whether it's a good wow or like a wow, that was different. It was a good time.
Monkey.
Okay, so I wanted to see it around the time it was out because I remember, well, mainly I remember a friend of mine loving it. I think one or both my parents really liked it, so I wanted to see it, didn't get to for whatever reason. And then, of course, this has been burning in the back of my mind for as long as it's been there. and of course, also watching it, I'm finally feel like now I can watch that Big Bird version, which I watched. It was wonderful.
Fa la 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 la.
That was funny.
So yeah, I watched it for the first time tonight. Like mere.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So I'm fresh off. This is like fresh off like first impressions. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Tiki, about this being a movie that improves on rewatch. So I get a feeling that might be a case with me.
Okay.
Like, I'm not gonna say I don't think I disliked this, and this isn't like, say, a movie where you say it improves on rewatch, but I have no desire to rewatch it. I would rewatch
This isn't a
this.
La La Land situation where it's like, I love it, but just you objectively, like, it's just very subjective taste differences.
So I'm trying to process. We waited nearly 4 years and you haven't even watched the movie until today?
I think that was part of his plan. Like, I think that was kind of part of his method, right, Monkey?
Okay. All right.
Something like that. Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
understand, because I kind of tend to do the same thing with some of these podcasts, Dragon, where if it's something I haven't seen, I'll wait until we, right before we go on air. That's nothing new with my method.
Yeah, I see cons to the method, but whatever. It happened.
All right, go on. Keep going.
Yeah, but yeah, I would rank this above La La Land, I'd say.
Well, yeah, I don't blame you, anyways.
Which, by the way, it did kind of tickle me when they mentioned Ryan Gosling at one point. So like, and Emma Stone, because Emma Stone's in this.
Yes.
But yeah, and for me, it might have also been like, taking this all in, like especially as a theater person who wants to make it to the Great White Way. Should I vent save my frustrations on that for later, or?
I would say kind of get into it a little bit if it's how you feel about the movie overall.
Kind of, because it might have been pretty distracting for me was how like my God, this production, like the play in this movie, what a fucking nightmare. like, oh my God, like there was like.
Let's just save it at that, Monkey. Let's hold it at that, and then we can get into details later. But yeah, I'm to be honest, okay. Monkey, I feel like the nightmare quality of the production is something that'll hold up on the rewatch as a compelling part of the movie because I know it does for me.
Okay, we can discuss that as we add later on. But
okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm like I do really I love the premise of this movie. I'm not sure it was executed in a way that really appeals to me. But hey, there's going to be a rewatch. So I'm sure there'll be a rewatch someday. Like
for
sometime.
Sure. Don't mention yet.
Not too far.
All right.
What?
Don't lynch him yet. And he's going to rewatch it. There's, Anyway.
Well, to be fair, Monkey, I honestly, this movie rubbed me the wrong way the first time I saw it because, to be frank, I thought it was a little bit self-masturbatory for Hollywood. It was like, oh, look how clever we are. Oh, it's self-referencing Michael Keaton's career. Aren't we clever? And ultimately, like I said, it was the rewatches and kind of like studying the minutia of it that really did it in for me. So, Monkey, I honestly completely understand where you're coming from because I was right there on my first watch.
Yeah. And I won't lie, like the ending felt off for me, like not just the oddness of it, but also just in a case of like things that, okay, what about these people? What about them? What happens with them?
Mm-hmm.
Like things that, like especially in terms of relationships that develop in the movie that get brought up once and then we like get brought up like once or so and then we never really know what the outcome is.
Sure.
So that bugged me a bit, but hey, at least this is one I am willing to give a rewatch.
Oh yeah. Okay, so let's kind of break down some of the background. I have the background from the director's point of view. Dragon has it from Michael Keaton's point of view, and Monkey has some interesting tidbits about the theater point of view of this movie, and then we'll jump into the actual categories. So, okay, so Alejandro Inarritu. Long and short of it is, folks, Inarritu, he was boiled down in misery. Like, if you watch his filmography, it's basically misery porn. Let's see, his filmography up to this point was 21 Grams, which was about drug cartels and whatnot, and the influence that had. It was basically kind of like a more grounded version of Sicario, like a more fanciful version of Sicario, if you will. Babel, which was essentially kind of like a butterfly effect movie, where it was kind of showing like how the effects of one action kind of rippled throughout like the whole globe. And Babel is interesting. It's an interesting movie. If you're looking for another Inarritu movie, I would recommend Babel over his other ones. There's Beautiful, which Beautiful is the one where Inarritu was like, okay, I'm focusing way too much on the misery of human nature. I need to do something a little more light. And that led to Birdman, because Birdman, of course, there were a number of challenges involved with Birdman. The technical side of things, Inarritu basically took it as a drunken dare, metaphorically speaking, to shoot it as, the single shot gimmick. But more importantly, Birdman was sort of like a spiritual journey for Inarritu. Because it is, at the core of it, it's not a happy movie by any stretch. It's a movie about a very depressed individual. But Birdman is essentially making the best out of a really, really depressed person's life. And the magical realism of Birdman had a lot to do with that, which we'll break down. And importantly, what Dragon was kind of alluding to is, yeah, it's true that this movie was not written specifically with Michael Keaton in mind. I'm sure upon when Keaton was hired, I'm sure with rewrites and stuff, I'm sure there was improv dialogue that maybe worked its way in. But specifically, the writer of this, interestingly enough, to kind of maybe segue to Monkey here, the writer of this kind of experienced sort of like the backstage horrors of being on a theater, of being backstage at a theater. And one of the four writers, I should say, this writer, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name because he's got like a really complicated Spanish name, and I'm not going to butcher it. I'm sorry. But this writer in particular, there are four writers, but this one in particular kind of shaped the theater element of the movie. And that was really kind of the focus, was the theater, in terms of like really the single shot gimmick came out of the Tightrope Act, which Inarritu famously describes this movie as. In fact, when production began, Inarritu sent out photos of the oh God, I forget his name, but he's the French man who walked the World Trade Center on a tightrope, played by
Man on the Wire, that guy.
Yeah, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the movie.
Yes.
But yeah. So, anyways, that's about the long and short of it. It was this movie was kind of like a spiritual exercise for Inarritu, and in terms of the writing, it was all about kind of the backstage pressures of the theater, which led to the kind of the frantic quality of the movie, the pace of the movie, and also the single shot gimmick of the movie. All right. So, Dragon, do you want to do your superhero stuff, and then we'll end on Monkey?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. So as it was kind of starting on, I kind of realized it sounded more like background than a thesis, so I kind of figured I'd just lump it into the background. Interestingly, Birdman wasn't written initially for Michael Keaton, but Keaton, I think Keaton definitely adds layers and influence to the commentary on superhero films and actors, and the actors that bring them to life. So here's the kind of the reality that kind of sets the stage for Regan Thomas in the film. Again, a lot of Keaton influences Regan in this film. So Keaton played, of course. Here's a lot of these are known facts. I'm just going to kind of go through them. So Keaton played Batman '89, of course, very historic Batman performance, the first dark Batman on film. And when that was announced way back in the day, of course, it was met with Mr. Batmom skepticism, a lot of skepticism, a lot of mocking. Mr. Batman, everyone completely forgotten. Hey, he did Beetlejuice. No, he's Mr. Mom. He can't wear a bat suit. Give him an apron. Anyway, and of course, people loved him, and that continued in 1992 with Batman Returns. People loved him, and Michael Keaton's an actor who, again, you even take the initial skepticism out of the way. I think the reason Keaton stuck around, the reason people like him so much, and you get to see a bit of this in the film through Reagan, is that this is a guy he's kind of a household name almost, more like a household face. Like he's a familiar face that you've seen Keaton. He's in a lot of movies, and whether the movies are good or bad, he's likable in it. People like to see Keaton. They're like, hey, it's him. We know him again. Mainly, we know him from Batman. If we don't know him from the stuff early pre-Batman. So yeah, people loved him to a point where to a point in a movie where in Returns where he kind of took a back seat in that film. Because again he kind of gave Michelle Pfeiffer and Dan DeVito gave the villains more to go on in that movie. And in the industry, as you see very much here, is that the industry it was taken a lot less seriously back then because he's kind of palling around with Jack Nicholson back in the day, and they're kind of laughing at each other on set. They're kind of breaking up takes. Where now playing a superhero, it's seen as it's a great honor. Where you have people kind of biting at the bits to bring something to their characters. In the MCU, they're really just kind of looking at the drama situation. Some of them trying not to break characters. Some people going method more than others. Christian Bale back in Batman Returns, even. Again, people are taking it a lot more seriously than they used to back then. It was just like, okay, actor in a costume. And he was supposed to do Batman 3, which of course we definitely see parallel in this film. And that people have seen the famous photos, like the gray costume. They were considering giving Batman finally the gray costume on screen. It was like being molded and mocked up. He did some fittings, but with Tim Burton out of the picture, Keaton didn't want to do it because he and Burton kind of got each other, and they kind of got what the vibe of the kind of the '89 Burton Batman was, and kind of the tone Schumacher was going for didn't really jive with him, so he turned it down. And I think the last thing I really have here is to kind of sync up kind of the Keaton of it all is that notably Keaton turned down $15 million from the studio, who they begged, they wanted him desperately, because again, people recognized him, people knew him as Batman. They didn't want to recast it like the revolving door of James Bond. They wanted to keep a consistent Batman. And it's a guy who turned down $15 million, and it was a risky move, and it kind of led to what we know as Keaton's career, which is for the most part after Batman. Again, a lot of low key, films for the most part. Again, some good performances here and there, but a lot of them are kind of Jack Frost, for example. A lot of them are kind of iffy. But it's like you get
Birdman. It was Jack Frost following him.
God. So it's basically you kind of he won. Again, some were successful, but Keaton became known, again, for good or bad. He became known, and when he was approached for Birdman, he was asked, he asked directly. He asked Alejandro, "Are you making fun of my Batman years, essentially?" And Alejandro explained to him, "Not exactly," and kind of sold him on kind of the premise of the experience of the movie. And it's there's definitely a big marketing appeal with, hey, everyone knows you used to be Batman. That plays directly into what the film's about. I mean, it does seem to be purely from a marketing standpoint, but that's the point. That's exactly what the film's plot is. So that's kind of how Keaton fits into this whole crazy thing.
Okay, Monkey, what do you got?
So, for backgroundish stuff.
Yeah, just general background stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously the theater that the show is being performed in is the St. James Theater. I've actually been in this theater. This is where I saw Something Rotten. And like I've said before, the first row of the mezzanine, incredible. Very close to the stage. And this theater is a cool one. It's had a bunch of notable productions throughout its day, the original productions of King and I, Hello Dolly. This is where the producers played. Yeah, this was the home of the original production of Oklahoma, which is a very notable one considering how that was like one of the first show where the song and singing and dancing actually furthered the plot. And Dragon, you're going to love this. In the next, starting in about a month, the St. James Theater is going to begin previews for its next show, Frozen.
Yeah. Which is?
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
Frozen.
Yeah, which is Frozen.
Yeah.
Sorry, you might have cut out there for a second. I didn't hear the Frozen part
But yeah, this is going to be the Broadway home for Frozen, the musical.
Huh.
Well, I could go on about the strange theater ownership element, but that's another day. So,
you mentioned cameos, Monkey?
Yes, there are cameos. There were two I didn't know about, and I only recognize some of them, but looking at the list, there's Jeremy Shamos as Ralph, who Reagan thinks is a terrible actor. Some of this I'm reading off of IMDb.
Oh, that guy. That's the guy who drops the light on, right? Or not?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah. So
right.
A couple of these, like him and Michael Seabury as Larry. I don't know who that is, but he's a guy. Okay, Lindsay Duncan. So that is a Broadway person. Okay, so she's in there as... Oh, it's the critic. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Critic has done Broadway. But so otherwise, the ones I was looking out for were William Humans as the bartender. Like this guy is in a bunch of Broadway ensembles, and he was the original Dr. Dillamond in Wicked.
Oh, nice.
We got a couple here with ties to Michael Cerveris. How funny is that?
Is it Cerveris or Severus? You met the guy, do you know?
I think Cerveris.
Huh. What do you
but
know?
Anyway, so
you kind of like the dog, yeah.
So Severus Snape.
Oh. Well, I was thinking of like Hades. Keep going.
So like this lady who tries to get Reagan's autograph in Times Square was in Sweeney Todd with him. And then some other woman in that sequence, like I think when he's coming back to the theater from Times Square is Roberta Colindres from Fun Home.
Nice.
Let's see. The lady on the balcony was like, "Is this real or a film?" That was Jackie Hoffman, who's
that's a great
Broadway character.
By the way.
Yeah, so she's like
you
this character
actress. Make me sick.
Yeah, she's done a bunch of Broadway shows as like Hairspray, Addams Family, most recently Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, Muse favorite.
Yeah. Apparently she was... Wait, whatever. But, okay, Bill Camp, that's another Broadway person. Okay, you didn't see his name. I guess he's done stuff. The good neighbor who appears on the roof to try and help Regan is Stephen Adley Gurgis. He's a playwright. He wrote, say, Jesus Hopped the A Train, Our Lady of 121st Street, Last Days of Judas Iscariot, Motherfucker with a Hat, and Susan Blackwell from Title of Show is an intermission woman. So,
okay.
Here's something I noticed on something kind of funny. So, during the scenes that take place up on the rooftop of the theater, so they're across the street. There's whatever's playing at the Broadhurst Theater, and throughout the movie, I was trying to figure what is it? It's like that one that's like a silhouette of a man. As we're starting up, I'm looking at the IMDb page, and it says that, because I was wondering, what show is that? Especially in that timeline that this movie was filmed in.
Right.
And because I'd also seen a clip before where you can see a different sign for it. But anyway, so apparently that ad wasn't real. That was just covering the poster for, that was covering the sign for Lucky Guy starring Tom Hanks, which was what was at the Broadhurst at the time of filming.
Nice, thanks.
But the weird part about this is, after the flying scene, when he comes back to the theater and you see that, and you see 44th Street, you see the Lucky Guy marquee. Why? Consistency, please? But yeah, and okay, I may as well sort of get this out of the way. It's sort of in a nitpicky sense, it's sort of annoying me how they said twice that there were 800 people they were performing in front of 800 people.
Uh-huh.
800 people, roughly $500
performances, right? Because that's less than half of the St. James's actual capacity.
Oh boy, Mister, I've been to the actual theater that this movie was shot in.
They don't have 800 seats?
No, he's saying they have twice as many.
Huh.
Yeah, so I guess might be one of this movie's equivalents of when Disneyland opened in 1956, nothing worked.
Right, pretty much.
So, so is this where I think about
no. Let's transition into the film stuff, and then we'll kind of circle back around to that.
Okay.
So really quickly, guys, what do you let's talk about the auteur side of things. So like I said, in terms of the filmmaking, of course, this movie is very well known for the single shot gimmick, as I call it, but it's really
which is very impressive. Although, just saying, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience did it first.
Was Honey, I Shrunk the Audience really a oneer?
Well, it's supposed to look like it.
Oh my god, wow. I never realized that.
I mean, I'm sure they worked around it, but yeah.
Well, yeah, and of course, in this movie, there's obvious ways that they work around it as well.
Oh, yeah, but yeah, that show was intended to look like a oneer.
Mm-hmm. So,
anyway,
guys...
that element of this movie is pretty impressive.
Yeah, before we get into the magical realism of this movie, which is the thing I want to spend the most time on with this segment, I want to talk about the diegetic sound in this movie, because I think it's an absolute freaking crime that this movie did not get nominated for Best Score at the Oscars, because the score in this movie is so goddamn unconventional and so pulse-pounding, and I love the way that it works its way into the actual narrative, and it becomes not necessarily a plot point, but definitely a fixture of the movie in the actual, in the actual timeline of the movie, the drumming band, the marching band.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I really love with that.
I agree with you. That was fun the first time we see the actual drummer, the guy actually drumming it.
Yeah, that is cool. What I also love, I think for me, one of the payoffs with that is that, it's not just kind of throughout the film, but there's a moment where I want to say, if I'm recalling this correctly, I want to say that the music kind of drowns out after Regan has that really kind of, the big heartfelt jellyfish scene, as the big jellyfish speech to his ex-wife. And I want to say shortly after, there's a pause where there's no music. And then, of course, they have the gun reveal, as he's been called to set, because again, he wants to stay there in the moment with her. Then, of course, we the audience see there are bullets within the gun. It's a real gun, and the point is, so then he, using his quote unquote telekinesis, he opens the door, and the minute he does that, the minute he does this thing he's been doing throughout the film, that's when the music cues up, and now all the intensity that you've been used to now takes on a whole new meaning of. This is a guy, again, fitting with the marching band thing. This is a guy taking the final march, as in this. Now, everything you've been seeing has been building to this moment of the pulse pounding drama.
Oh yeah.
I really like that as a payoff in the rewatch. It's a great conceit, though. Regardless, just it's kind of like a great kind of meta fourth wall, kind of like, hey, all this drum that is coming from an actual place. But again, playing with that realism, I don't know if that serves as a transitioning point or not. But regardless, just the looking at the realism within the world, these things that just seem to be otherworldly are somewhat rooted in reality. Yet the reality starts to fade at a certain point. Then the rest is just like it is.
I freaking love the ambiguity of Riggan's powers in this movie. It's one of the things I keep going back to, and still to this day, I've seen this movie maybe like probably over 10 times. And I still don't have a solid answer for Riggan's powers. I really don't.
It does feel very Bates Motel projection to me. That's what it feels very much like. Like when Norma's in a scene. Of course, Norman has to. It's kind of a similar fun conceit where it leads you to imagine Norman has to set all these things up to have Norman interact with them. So you imagine there's like Riggan has like a similar thing going on. And I think the moment when Jake, when Galifianakis enters, and you see him, he was throwing stuff around. I think that's kind of, for me, that's the Bates Motel answer for me. It's like, okay, yeah, he has to set these things up. So yeah, that for me is the answer.
The ending confused it a bit, but I assumed it was just all in his head.
I mean, you're right, Tiki. It is ambiguous. I'm just saying that's.
Let's talk about that ending because I feel like it's a big hot button issue with this movie. I personally really like the ending, but I feel like I'm in the minority that really likes the ending. I've heard more people not like the ending, Monkey, so you're not alone.
Tiki, if I may, I think the big question we should ask is not how we feel about the end, but where is the ending?
What do you mean? Like,
well, I mean, like we have the theory of the multiple ending. Like, where does it end?
Okay, well, if you're going to get into that, Dragon, then
well,
I have to...
We don't have to if you don't want to. We can hold off on it.
No, let's get into it. Let's get into it because this is one of the things I love about the movie is the little details. So you know how at the very, very beginning of the movie, we see the quick flash, the quick 1 or 2 frames of the jellyfish on the beach before...
Yes. Oh, that's what they were. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also kind of wasn't following along with the jellyfish speech, so... So, like, Dragon is a jellyfish, and I'm like, oh, is that what that was about? I think my mind might have been elsewhere, like, distracted by other things.
Well, it's fine, Monkey, because, like, it's at the very beginning. It's at the very beginning of the movie, and it's like a quick flash. It's like a couple frames, so you don't really...
But then when it pulls on them later, I was like, what are those, like, sea cows or something?
Oh, yeah, right. No, they're jellyfish, yeah. So my theory of the movie, my basic theory is it's all essentially a dying fever dream of Riggan as he's lying on the beach after being stung by the jellyfish.
Wow, I didn't think of that. That's cool.
And the only reason I think that is because of the quick flashes of the jellyfish that we get right at the very beginning of the movie, and then right after the single shot ends.
I gotta tell you, Dave, I haven't really heard that one before. It's a very interesting.
The reason you haven't heard that is because it's my own headcanon.
That's cool. I like that.
Like no one else has really come up with that, but I connect the dots based on the jellyfish.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I guess for me, well, here's where I think it. For me, being an optimist, I feel it ends. I like to think that he survived the honestly. Logically, I think it ends. He shoots himself and he's dead on stage, and the rest is a fantasy. That's where logically, I think it actually ends. But
I wrote down in my notes, he lived.
Where I like to think it ends, I like to think that it ends where the second he pulls off the bandages to reveal the new nose. I think like the minute he removes the bandages, that's when it's all completely. I know we have like the Birdman hallucination to kind of confirm. Okay, that's well, very very likely that's in his head. I like to think that like there's he's like really deformed under. Well, it doesn't look as clean and nice as it does. I like the horror that I love. Let me talk about this for a moment, if I may. I love the symbolism of the Birdman bandage, of the bandage he wears at the end, because that really is. It's kind of the medium of it's the perfect melding of his symbol, where he's as you see in the image before us here, like Birdman over his shoulder. it's like, am I? It's very much a who am I Bruce Wayne story in many respects. Like, it's a kind of who am I then? Am I Regan Thomas? Am I just an actor who can be many roles, or am I Birdman? And
I was wondering, like, before they show him in the hospital bed, are they going to pan over and it's Birdman lying in the bed?
Oh God, that would have been crazy.
I mean, yeah, I mean, just the bandage alone, even before, like, it doesn't matter what's underneath, but just that bandage itself, it's the middle ground where this is a guy who's just been beaten up by this symbol, and it cosmically he can't escape it, even trying to end himself on the stage. And of course, we have like a reveal. It's like that scene where he's pulling off the bandage. It's kind of like a Joker from '89 or like a Two-Face reveal where he's like taking off the bandage. So honestly, I just think it kind of, I like to think it ends there. Is, it's powerful. I love getting that visual symbols. That's where I like it to end. Probably does end with the whole with the jellyfish hallucination.
And to tell you the truth, this movie is a Rorschach test, and I feel like there's no one interpretation of it. And I've seen this movie a couple times, and I've read it. At least from my point of view, I think you can read this movie as a true superhero movie.
You could look at it. I'm sorry.
Which let's just kind of take that as the transitioning point to talk about the superhero stuff here. But structurally, I feel like this is like the most art house superhero movie ever made, because you could look at it and you could take it all just completely literally. You could take it as that he does have these telekinetic powers. You could take it that Birdman is this sort of like weird alter ego of his. And at the very ending, honestly, there's parts of me that really like to think that he did just fly away, and Emma Stone at the very end is seeing her dad floating above her from that hospital window, because you get that look of enchantment on her face. And I would like to read it as that, because I've said since this movie, I'd like to see Andy Muschietti direct like a true superhero movie, like direct a fucking Spider-Man or something. How different would that be?
You know what's brilliant about
already in this movie?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
I got stuff to say about that. We'll get there.
Oh, that would make me so happy if it was Reeve Carney in the suit.
Oh God.
Anyway, yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting, Tiki. Now, speaking to that, I love in the films, when the filmmaking, before he transitions to the superhero stuff there, I love in the filmmaking that we have that light fixture is so pivotal, because that's the thing where you have to, that really is the one thing you can't rule out necessarily, because again, that light fixture just drops on that guy perfectly, and you don't know if he made it looks so much like he made that happen, but then again, if you look at like a Bates Motel projection thing earlier on, he knew where that guy was going to sit. He loosened that thing, and it was a matter of time. So I mean, he was late to the scene. You don't know what he did, but beforehand. But again, that's the closest thing you had to, like, it's almost irrefutable, but it's almost unknowable. It's practically it is unknowable. Speaking of that, to transition my superhero point here. So yeah, with the ending, with those ambiguous elements, but especially the ending, there was very much borrowing from some of the greatest comic book stories ever. With Watchmen's ambiguity. With
I would say arguably even Unbreakable could be an influence on it.
Sure, and that definitely kind of fits with Alejandro's style. And Killing Joke, especially, of course, the old like, does he kill the Joker or not? The vaguely, the ambiguous ending there. But again, definitely like a Watchmen, like, do they find? Well, now we're getting kind of an answer to that in DC Comics, but before there was a time with Watchmen where like Seymour, you don't know if he turned in the journal or not. You don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many fascinating, fascinating parallels, not only to Batman. Here's the thing: I love that it's not just about Batman, but I would love more so, and how it kind of evolves from just like a superhero thing with the, does he have telekinesis or not? To, it looks at the industry of superhero films, and that ties into the whole criticism thing, which I'm going to leave Monkey most of that criticism thing to go up against there.
Okay.
What I want to hit on, though, with the industry, though, is that the industry, I think, is some of the most fascinating commentary within this film, because it comments on how the perspective of superheroes has changed greatly. As I said with Keaton earlier on, where again, this is a guy where you're in a suit and it's like, hey, we got a big name actor, big names in the marquee, and they're kind of laughing it up on saying how ridiculous this is. But little do they know, this inspires a number of people. We don't get Batman the Animated Series without him in that rubber bat suit. And there's definitely hints throughout this film of like the current climate, or the at least 2014's current climate of superhero films. And a lot of it still rings true today, even more so. Where there's definitely Marvel versus DC, very much kind of the MCU versus a lot of what's going on with the rest of the competition there. Where again, Regan has a disregard for Marvel, where it's like all the other actors he wants to play against him are actors involved in Marvel franchises, which of course now are somewhat under the same roof, where it's like Michael Fassbender, he's doing the X-Men movie. Hawkeye, he did Hurt Locker, and he's an Avenger. Like all of that, there's such a distaste for him. Of course, the irony is that he's playing against yet another Marvel actor in Edward Norton. And also, I think I completely forgot about.
To be in the MCU.
I'm sorry.
And then, of course, Keaton went on to be in the MCU.
Yes, he did, and that definitely ties into Spider-Man stuff there. Real quick before I get there, I'm building to it. There's like a big building block on the rewatch. I caught this. I almost it's been a while since I've seen the movie. I completely forgot about this. There's a really great bit. It's really brief. It goes by real fast. Where Reagan is he's watching TV and they're talking about Robert Downey Jr. And of course, one of the big famous kind of comparisons you always have is like Batman, Iron Man, rich billionaire in a suit. And of course, where the MCU has Iron Man as the big poster child of 2008. You also have Dark Knight. You always have those two icons of their respective companies at that time being compared. And I love the symbol of one. He calls him Tin Man, which is funny, but he also equates it to he was an actor who he's in the suit. He's dealing with practical effects. He's dealing with kind of the grunt work of being in a superhero film. Where now it's so easy with a guy like Robert Downey Jr. He has such a comeback. He's a guy who was a trouble actor. He has a comeback. People love him now, and he has an easy job. He's in a CG suit. He's in like a couple times like now where it's just more CG than is in the foam core suit.
If I may, maybe it's sort of that's even more fueled by by Regan doing theater, which is of course no CGI. It's all physical.
Yes. Of course. And it's also again like another comeback story. I'm trying to have a comeback story on the stage, and with all those Marvel actors, I guess what I'm getting at a lot of it is that he's confronted by the industry all throughout. Again, with Renner, with Fassbender, that he's confronted by an industry that he tried to leave. That again, he kind of took the $15 million. Like I don't feel like I don't need to do another one. I don't want to be stymied. I don't want to be typecast. I don't want to be stuck in this one role. Course, taking the bumpy road that follows that and still being known for that role anyway, he can't escape the reminders of the option he had back in the day. Look at how much a $1 million industry is. It's kind of like a gray matter from Breaking Bad almost. It's like look what you could have been a part. So. And there are these dark truths that are there. These dark truths that I'm gonna kind of segue it to Monkey here in a moment. Yet these dark truths, how Birdman is always a viable fallback. That no matter what, all he needs to do to get all the fame and adulation he ever wants is just as his inner voice kind of taunts him with. You just put on the suit again. We get maybe a facelift. Exactly, reboot. Maybe get a facelift again. It's a comeback story. People will pay because you built up a fan base, idiot. You can come back to it anytime you want, and it'll be basically that boost to his ego that we see with him, and it literally mirrors the heroin shot from Breaking Bad. I'm sorry, there are a lot of Breaking Bad comparisons in this.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's literally when his ego is being lifted when he's starting to fly, and it kind of builds a little like. The little bird call moment.
His moment, by the way.
Jimmy!
Yeah, but again, like that boost to his ego is.
Oh God, now I want to see a spoof of this where Andrea Martin is followed around by Miss Fowl.
Oh, please God, yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, and it's the fact that his ego is like an addiction. That just the fact that his. You have fame at your disposal, and he's trying to fight an addiction almost. So it's and again, like all that stuff, that the fact that you can go back there, it's that cynical viewpoint where looking at it critically. I'm going to hand over like the critics, the theater actor and versus the critic in a moment, where you have a cynical view established by his cynical inner voice, where the audience is, I think. that dark truth that the cynical viewpoint speaks to is that audiences crave being taken to the edge in endings. Is that, you know, people in this scene that again the main image we have here is that, again, it shows you that spectacular kind of blockbuster chaos and climax. Basically looks like a Transformers movie on the streets.
Again, Transformers show up.
Yes, that too. Yes, and it's the fact that, you know, people just crave like seeing the end of the world a lot of the time. Again, Birdman 3 is a prominent symbol within that poster trilogy.
Yeah, that scene with like the chaos in the streets. That was cool. That was a neat like change of pace for the movie.
Yeah.
Like,
yes, and again, the trilogies, endings, and of course, this film builds the, again, Regan is on a path, and I'll elaborate on this later. It's just, you know, basically he's on a Dark Knight Returns, this would be a good death journey. That's what Regan's arc is in this movie. This would be a good death. He's a guy who is kind of longing for an end, whether it's on the stage or through he's going to die on stage, whether it's literally or it's like, you know, in the reviews, because as the critics see it, and this is where I hand it over to Monkey all slightly.
if I may ask, how do you guys feel about the critic character?
Well, yeah, I think remind me of her name, because I keep thinking of
I don't remember the name.
Tabitha.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Tabitha. She's kind of looking to and speaking to it with what Regan thinks of himself. There, you know, you're an answer to a Trivial Pursuit question. Your dwindling fame will be on talk shows, on television, and it's like she knows his self-doubt. She can kind of smell it in him. So I think Tabitha's interesting. She does speak to kind of critics.
I feel like she subverts the typical trope of like, oh, we're going to write a critic into the movie and they're going to be really mean.
Yeah, it's like she owns that, though. It's like she is like, there's no Anton Ego redemption. Depending on how you look at the ending, there's no real Anton Ego redemption for her. She is like, Anton Ego, it's a fascinating kind of like, hey, you know, critics are complicated. They're not all bad. In this case, what if you had a critic that really was bad? And again, that kind of speaks to what superhero movies are contending with now, where you have the speculation of pre-written reviews. Or movies, just because it's MCU, no matter what, it's going to be a success. DCEU, the films have been definitely, in the critics' eyes, very bad, and therefore there might be a pre-written bad review, and they have to combat that and say, okay, hold all reviews, don't release anything, because you need to sell tickets to the movie before that goes out. And I guess with Tabitha, just with the theater side of it, is that, you know, my favorite bit.
Go on.
Sorry, last thing, I know I'm going along here, try to segue with the correct thing. But the last thing I'll say about her, just in the theatrical context, I suppose, is that Tabitha, she had there's this great line. There's this great line in the movie where, okay, I'm trying to think, I might have lost it. Darn it. Tabitha. Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost. Monkey, you take over. Anything?
Yeah, my thoughts are sort of like conflicted on hers. Like, because at first, like when she's all, I'm going to write a negative review and kill your show. Like, even though she hasn't seen the damn thing yet, so like I'm all like, what a bitch. But I can also partially understand where she's coming from. Like when she says like how, like because of what this sort of represents, like you're invading our turf, and like, which I know there's some dick element to that, but at the same time, kind of like what she says, like it's not just that Hollywood actor invading Broadway. It's also like she says something like how this is some weird, like unprofessional ego project.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there, Monkey. It's
so
basically
so I can get where that's coming from. So.
Yeah, his name alone is what putting every. He didn't earn his way to the stage. He didn't raise the money. He didn't do any of that because he just obviously he's having financial issues. But the point is it's not something he's like earned. Like he didn't like sell people on the art. He just he had a lot of money that he funneled into the show.
And how
I remember I was going to say that.
Yeah, that was some.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Real quick, it was in that scene at the bar with Tabitha. I love that line. I think one of the best lines in the movie on the rewatch is when Regan says, basically he unloads on Tabitha about critics, and has a really profound statement about critics, where it's that like these are all opinions, all opinions, and not you don't take into consideration what went into the production. I think that's really profound. Something I love that being put in the dialogue. Is that, that's very true about critics of all varieties. Is that they don't really. There's a lot of facts and opinions, and with Tiki and I think just your general podcasters, what we try to do is we try to take into account what went into these movies behind the scenes and kind of the cool stuff. It kind of adds like layers as to like kind of how there's sometimes a meta quality as it's kind of like a guy putting his art on stage.
And sometimes just we as fans need to sort of like put a level head on it. Like I feel like the situation with The Last Jedi is the perfect sort of example of fans just kind of ruining a movie for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, people are putting themselves out there, and there is a risk. And it's like the fascinating thing that Reagan kind of exposes there is that he put everything on the line for this production. It makes you kind of double think. It makes you think twice for a moment about like, hey, if you just say, oh my God, this movie or this production is terrible, people dedicated their months, their lives to that sort of thing. They. Mm-hmm. Like their careers are on the line. That some of them. And
Dragon, that sort of language is like it's language that even people that I really respectful will use from time to time. Like for example, our buddy Jacob Gulliver over at the Super Academy podcast, the Movie Machine podcast, and the Super Academy web series. Like Dragon, Jacob very famously in our eyes, kind of he has a big dislike for Guardians of the Galaxy. And he knows he's in the minority of that, but he feels like because he's in the minority on that, he has to sort of be outwardly vocal about his distaste, right? And so I've noticed, like, kind of in that language, and of course, you and I, we have a lot of respect and fondness for Jacob Gulliver. He's a great guy, and very talented guy. But famously, when the movie came out on DVD, Gulliver kind of took to Facebook to sort of post some vile on it. Scott Decker, who played Slothmaster, joined in on it.
Scott Reefer.
I'm sorry, Scott Reefer.
You're thinking of Kyle Decker. Do you mean Kyle Decker?
Yes, I'm thinking of Kyle Decker because Kyle Decker had to come in and be like basically what you were saying, Dragon. Like, hey, look, guys, like a lot of people put a lot of time and resources into this movie, so we shouldn't just say the movie in itself is crap. Like subjectively, if the movie doesn't work for you, like let's say for me, like Thor Ragnarok is a movie where it didn't make my top 10 pretty much specifically because I felt the humor was a little too goofy, even though it's a very fun movie overall. So I'm sorry. I feel like we're kind of going back into the superhero side of things.
Real quick, if I get into the movie thing for a second, just to help you out maybe.
Okay, but then I feel like we need to kind of seriously go into the theater side of things with Monkey because I feel like we sort of sidelined him.
Sure. Okay. Real quick, just ultimate example I think I got here. Seth MacFarlane. He he's made a couple of movies, and he's really a very honest kind of filmmaker, and that he'll admit on commentaries all the time that now he's been given pause after all the jokes he's made about movies on Family Guy. He's always now having been in the director's chair, he's second guessed himself, thinking, you know what, I mean, these a lot of work goes into these films, and again, there are some pre-written bad reviews about him off the bat because he's Seth MacFarlane. And at the same time, again, they're having a blast making that movie, and you can see where the fun's coming from. Again, like Liam Neeson's in that movie because he wants to be there. He's not, he's not, he's done cameo appearances from other places because he had a good time making that movie that is perceived as bad. Again, there is joy to be had in these productions.
A spoof of Birdman where Seth MacFarlane is followed around by every single character he's voiced on Family Guy.
Oh my God. Well, like, just throw in like American Dad characters in there too.
Paul, we gotta have Roger.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, all right, what are you doing there? Hey,
oh, you sound like me. Well, you sound like me.
There's a whole street in New York filled with them.
Oh God. Okay, so Monkey. I'm really curious to talk about the sort of the experiences that you have.
To sort of touch back on, well, if I may sort of touch back on the film idea, like with the one or so, based on some of the brief stuff I was looking at earlier during the podcast, I'm guessing this wasn't the intention of the, like, behind the oneers. But there was a point where I was wondering, so like, so it would emulate watching a play.
No, it could be, Monkey. Yeah, I think that is a part of it. Yes,
Yeah,
you're right.
I
think you're right about that.
That's always
sort of
like,
the energy of live theater.
I'm intrigued by with live theater is how it's all one vantage point. It's all. It literally is a oneer. And yeah, and I may also reference a scene from the bar, like a bit that kind of like was notable to me was where the family in there wants to take a picture with Regan, and they just ask Mike to take the picture.
He used to be Birdman.
That's right after Mike says, like, look, nobody in this town gives a shit about you.
Yeah, it's like, and that is sort of, and yeah, it's like, yeah, this is Birdman, then here's some other person, and yeah, like, so that did kind of stand as like an example of, say, how like people know who Nathan Lane is, but not necessarily, like, they may not know who Christopher Sieber is.
Actually, Monkey, let's touch on that for a second, because I honestly find it hilariously appropriate that there was a show starring Tom Hanks right across the street as this was being shot. Like, how fitting is that? Because, Monkey, I'm sure it's something you can...
Is that why they had to cover it up, I wonder?
Maybe.
But then
just because Tom Hanks is so
that other time.
Yeah, who knows? But Monkey, what do you think, just like in general, the idea like of, you know, like big celebrities coming and like overtaking a theater show where it's all about them and less about the actual show?
There's always different sides to that where, I guess, about, say, it's more stammering. Like, maybe it'll bring people to the theater, hopefully, but of course, and there's always like the question of stunt casting or star casting, like, say, the amount of celebrities of questionable quality who have gone through Chicago.
Oh yeah.
Like, so there's been a lot there, but so for me, there's like a question.
Another one that got a lot of stunt casting.
I feel it's more controversy over the stunt casting because there's that great bit in the movie where it's every time on stage, everyone's saying like previews don't matter, and basically it's all the stuff that goes wrong is what's drawing the crowd in, because the one they want it's kind of their
which is very much like kind of like the Spider-Man thing.
Yeah, they're all waiting to see him fail. They're waiting to see. It's less a name. It's kind of name recognition, but waiting to see him fail. Which again, there's a scary level to the movie like that. Like all these people are waiting to see if he's going to fail or not.
Didn't they also say like one of the reasons they brought Mike on was because he would sell tickets?
Yes, and again, he's kind of tanking the show, but he has it's per his plan that he tanks the preview so that more people get interested. Of like,
exactly.
They brought this wild card at the last minute.
Social media angle.
Yeah.
Wait, he was planning to fuck stuff up?
Well,
yeah,
I mean, yeah. Some of it might just be in the moment, but yes.
I'm pretty sure that was his general idea, Monkey. I'm pretty sure his general idea was kind of like attracting social media buzz.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's his process.
Later, I guess. But yeah, back on like casting famous people in your things, like it can work at times. Like, say, Josh Groban. When he was on Broadway,
was a good example. Yeah, he was
like, it's easy to. I've said this before. It's easy to see that as star casting, but at the same time, like, he was super well cast. And he was also not in the show that much, but yeah, he was cast super well in that. Like, that was casting that definitely worked.
Okay.
So,
all right. So
yeah,
I feel like we kind of got sidelined.
An interesting dynamic. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
What was that? Okay, so
I'm sorry. It's just like I feel like the big meat of this theater conversation. I feel like we've kind of like gone away from our three structure here. So theater wise, Monkey.
So, yeah, it was kind of.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so it was kind of funny, like, watching this movie and imagining what kind of stuff would be getting said on a Broadway fan forum.
Oh God.
What kind of article, like, I picture going on to Broadway World and seeing, like, what articles about this show would be getting posted during the process, like rehearsals and previews, and then what would people be saying in the forums?
Actor drunk on stage. Actor attempted rape on stage.
I'll get to that, but
Crazy.
yeah. So yeah, and so
I'm sorry.
Okay,
It felt like you had a lot to say about the behind-the-scenes stuff, Monkey, and I feel like we're kind of burying the lead on it.
Okay, just one more sort of thing before I get to that element of it is like I did have a sort of like there was a moment in this like the Times Square sequence that did feel kind of, when I think about it, it's kind of like the equivalent of like TGIF shows getting Disney World's geography wrong.
Oh God.
Like the route he takes is impossible. Like the turn he takes to get back to the theater, he would be like on the wrong side of the street and the wrong side of the theater.
Oh God.
That theater is
yeah,
so
it's like it's like that was interesting. Like, so I'm guessing that's what it's really like backstage.
I feel like they shoot the theater the same way that Kubrick shot the Overlook Hotel, like where the geography specifically doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I could buy that.
And it was neat for me to like think of like, say, because of however it was they filmed this, to think how you'd have scenes like them rehearsing and then the scenes of the performance, and somewhere in between, like especially the first time we see people in the theater, an audience. So at some point during this, they had to get a ton of people take seats in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was neat. So yeah, so this backstage element was like, my God, I hope that real Broadway shows aren't run this horribly.
God.
Like Mike, God. Oh my God.
Because of course you've been in the thick of a lot of productions yourself.
Like as it's like that is my chosen field. It's what I want to do. So so first he seems like just a pastiche of like, I'm trying to be true, like find the truth in it. And then it's like fucking unprofessional stuff. Like how we keep like
tanning bed.
Yeah, like all the stuff like that, or like switching out props and change and like going off script during an actual performance, and was it like grabbing the fly ropes and like fucking up there, like
right,
and then of course like, you know, attempted rape. He tries to rape a woman.
Which I will admit, that's definitely the most uncomfortable thing in the whole movie, I think.
Especially in the stuff like in this day and age with the sexual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, even in theater. Like, say, a certain Broadway star who's came under fire recently for pretty horrid behavior.
Right.
But yeah, God. And also like some of the, and like even Regan is like pretty unbearable. Like,
you know, he's destroying his dressing room, like destroyed everything that they probably like specified.
That he's like fuck, and he's still fucking around with things like being late. The whole getting stuck outside thing. Let's see what else was there. Should have written this more stuff down, and I wrote stuff down. But so when this, and like, so if he, and like the whole situation that leads to Mike being there, so like you couldn't have dealt with that not so good actor sooner, or like in also like in a less violent way, and then why couldn't they have the understudy take over?
Well, again, it was for that publicity. It's for that name. I mean, I guess I believed in like the theater community within Birdman. The idea is that Shiner.
Shiner, yes.
Right, Mike Shiner. You know, he's a big theater draw. So they got him in there, which again, it's gonna double. You don't think all these controversies are going to double it even more. They're not anticipating the controversies, but at the same time, you know, it was like a last minute thing. He knew all the lines because he was the girl he attempted to rape. He was he was dating her, and she knew him, and she knew, hey, he's kind of a known actor. We
also,
get him in
like
here.
if your thing about him like intentionally fucking things up just to get attention, fuck that. Like.
If I may, I'm saying we're kind of talking about Mike a lot here with kind of stuff that's going wrong here. Can I talk about Ed Norton for a little bit here?
Yeah, because I feel like Ed Norton, like the way that his role is written, very much mirrors Michael Keaton in terms of like his character is very much an avatar for the way Ed Norton is portrayed in real life.
Yes, I mean this reflects. So, well, here's what's notable about Ed Norton. I think there's going to be some crossover between movies and then the superhero stuff here. Because I'm speaking to an example of Norton on a superhero.
We have to wrap this up soon, guys, because this is going on longer than I was expecting it to.
Yes, but if I may, like there was a time or two in this where I was reminded of in Lindsay Ellis's Phantom video essay where she comments like, "Also, how are all of you not fired constantly?"
Yeah, right.
Right.
Like. Thank God for the blonde actress for like showing like the side of people who like the actors who are genuinely trying to follow their passion and their craft.
And Naomi Watts, she's I feel like she's a great role in this movie.
Because like I would fucking hate having Mike be a representative of Broadway actors.
Right. And to be honest with you, Monkey, I feel like Mike is just more of an example of kind of just fame in general in this movie. Like he's sort of like I feel like he's supposed to represent the worst in Broadway, and we know that it's the worst in Broadway. You know what I mean? It's not supposed to be like the norm by any stretch.
But he's still up kind of at the forefront.
Sure.
Like, yeah.
All right, Dragon. I'm sorry. Let's just try and get things towards an end point, but.
Sure, I'll make this brief and we'll get to the endpoint stuff.
Just one more theater concern, that confused me with the ending was how when the Galifianakis guy is saying how from what I understood, it seemed like the reason that it seemed like a big thing that was making the show a phenomenon was Regan almost killing himself, and then and then Galifianakis is this is going to play for ages, and we're going to open productions in London and yada. How does that work? How is the
okay? Well, to be fair, Monkey, at that point in the movie,
is the show dark for a while? Is the show dark? Do they have an understudy going on? And then what? You're expecting him to like shoot it, almost kill himself, try and kill himself every night, and then you take
Monkey,
him to
at
London
that point in the movie, everything that happens is like very much like up for interpretation. You know what I mean? It's like.
The way of reading it is that the point is people will see the production even if it's just like that they know that originally happened. Like the guy actually shows even if they rehearse it, even if it's performed again with the fake gun, people are going to know, oh, that's based on something real. So
it's almost kind of like the Spider-Man thing where it's like you go to Spider-Man and you're not going to see someone like fall to their, fall and have an injury every time. Yeah.
So that's the appeal there. So again, just speaking of Spider-Man, so I guess I'll round off to the end, but let me get through this Norton stuff real quick.
Okay.
So I think with Ed Norton, again, we have a similar thing with Keaton, where, of course, we reflect truths about Norton here, where Norton, he reflects his need to be in control and to make the project his own, because he worked on Incredible Hulk, and notably Ed Norton, he did not continue to play Bruce Banner in the MCU. And again, he wasn't a bad Bruce Banner, we'll make that clear. And here's the thing with Ed Norton, and we see this with Mike a little, too, is that he has good ideas, but he steals a lot of thunder. Like he was working with Regan. Regan sees that this guy is a talented actor, but again, he tells him the personal Ray Carver story, and he steals that for his own.
Uh-huh.
And with Norton, is that Norton he messed with the Hulk script because there was a draft of the Incredible Hulk script. He did a lot of revision on the dialogue, which ended up being a lot of deleted scenes in the Incredible Hulk DVD. And like he kept stealing Zach Penn's, the original writer's thunder at all the comic and saying, "Hey, I practically wrote the script," and he didn't. And Norton didn't get writing credits, so he took it out on publicly. So the point is, he's like Norton. He's confident and unafraid of bombing, but he at the same time that holds him back a little because he's still not in the big leagues yet because people know he's difficult to work with, if not worth it. Again, Edward Norton's still getting work, but he missed out on the big leagues like the MCU because he kind of wrote it off to save face. Like, oh yeah, I didn't come back to that because I didn't want to get landlocked into a role, and really it means they didn't want to put up with me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to think of like how we should approach kind of a. I guess. Want me to start off with talking about his arc a little, Regan's arc?
I guess.
So again, it's broadly. I touched on this a little bit, just kind of bring some stuff home, I guess. The plot, for the most part, is very much, it's Dark Knight Returns. This would be a good death, which is a very powerful opening of the book and reflects how Regan has that voice in his head, very much like Bruce Wayne in that story, and mainly in the animated film too, has kind of that voice of like his inner desire to return at every turn to return to Batman, because he's been gone from that role for several years, as has Regan from Birdman. He's aching, that side of him is aching to return. It's kind of funny too that when Birdman is in full force, like behind you, he sounds like it's essentially he goes full Beetlejuice, but he sounds like Batman. That's kind of it's a meld of his two most iconic roles as Birdman, which is kind of funny. And again, there's that who am I story mixed with this would be a good death. We see the duality in the voice with that. The bandage, as I mentioned, is a symbol. I love this on a analyzing it now. This is the best thing I think, analyzing it now and seeing where we end up with Regan. There are touches of Spider-Man and Marvel all throughout this film. Of course, the MCU thing where we have Robert Downey Jr. and again we had like the performers in the Spider-Man costume on the streets. And I think it's kind of like an intimate kind of look peering into the future. It's like an intimate kind of hint at the future to come. And this film, you could still read it as kind of as an optimistic thing. Obviously, they didn't predict the future, but I think it's kind of trippy. They kind of did. Is that Reagan's ending? Is that he's that symbols that he's embracing the new industry. He is his Galifianakis is kind of teasing like he all this potential now, all these roles, and I think they alluded to him possibly being open to Birdman as well. Like but he said Hollywood's going to be calling. So regardless, Regan will be back in the movies.
Which is very true to Michael Keaton.
Yes, and that's exactly what I'm getting at.
Hey, guy, you're going to get roles again. You're going to star in Spider-Man. You're going to be a Spider-Man villain.
Exactly, and that's the thing.
It's also vaguely bird-themed.
Exactly, and again, it's so meta in that. So again, regardless whether it's called the future now, this thing metally paves, it paved the way because superhero movies, they look at Oscar movies to get their actors. So they looked at this movie to get him as the Vulture. You don't have Vulture without this movie. And again, this movie's all about getting to a point like that. So again, it's like a full circle. It's like a hopeful full circle end, despite kind of the dark stuff that gets us there. That he's embracing this new industry at the same time he got to go through his artistic endeavor. He did it on his own terms, which were dark, but he got that hopeful end with essentially with the Vulture. It's a celebration of the history where actors like Keaton and Regan built the superhero industry, and the industry is like he's passe. We're all about the new stuff, but this guy kind of built the foundation that you don't get the MCU without all that. He got this on acting. He got the role of the Vulture in real life on acting merit versus just being Batman or just being that. Known for that role, that's what I'm saying. He got it on merit, even though it's like it's ironic how he got another superhero film, but he got it on his merit.
And he technically played a superhero to get the other superhero film. Technically,
Yeah, so the addiction story is no longer is he getting fame as an addiction, he's getting it as a reward, and that's kind of what you get if you go to the very end with Sam looking up and kind of giving a laugh. That's like the whole, now his hallucinations are not in negative light. Like, oh my god, the horrificness of like what he is putting himself through here. It's like, no, it's crazy, but it's hopeful.
All right. So guys, we really need to wrap up here, Dragon. I feel like that was a good kind of way to wrap things up, is kind of like, you know, reality mirroring this movie in a weird way. Monkey, anything else you want to say about this? Any final thoughts?
It'll be interesting to see how it is on rewatch, like, and if the like unprofessionalness of the production still distracts me, or if I can eventually like get past it while I watch it. So fuck Mike, and it'll be interesting to see the rewatch of this. At least I am willing to rewatch it.
All right, yeah, and for me, like I said, folks, this is definitely in my pantheon. This is to me, like, there's like the Social Network, and then like literally everything else. So like, it's not the Social Network, but I'd say it's in the top 5 movies of the decade so far that aren't the Social Network. You know, it's up there with stuff like Inception, Moonrise Kingdom, you know, stuff of that caliber. And I really do think that it's a great blending of these 3 genres that we've been talking about. I think the fact that this conversation sort of, you know, like we first, you know, we tried to keep this as linear as we could through the first 2/3 of this conversation, but then at the last third, it just kind of veered off into craziness. And I think that's reflective of the movie itself. You know, the movie itself is kind of like this weird, like uncontained, you know, artistic expression piece. And it's almost like a Jackson Pollock painting of just like images and ideas and just everything just being like sprung at the wall at the same time. And it's got a really meta quality to it. And the meta quality to it continues to reflect real life today. And just, you know, and obviously just impeccably shot, impeccably acted, yada, yada, yada. We all know that. It's a fantastic time. Go see it. And Monkey, I definitely think it'll hold up on a rewatch for you. I think you'll like it better on a rewatch. All right. Dragon, final thoughts? Take us out.
Yeah, Birdman is a fascinating film. It's so well made. There's a lot to read into. At the same time, just taking it at face value, you're seeing a desperate actor known for one role doing something ambitious and putting everything he has into the performance, into this show, and it's a sacrifice for a higher calling almost. You know, it's tragedy with the illusion of optimism. That's a hero's journey in a nutshell, and that's kind of the beauty of Birdman. It's just it's an enigma wrapped in a Rubik's cube. It's fascinating. It's great. Ah!
And the world will look up and say, fa la 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 la.